It is standard law enforcement. If you have a neighborhood that is plagued by gang activity, it is standard and good law enforcement to direct more resources, to work with the community that is facing gang activity, to stop the gang members, to take them off the street. And so it is standard good policing to direct your resources to where the threat is coming from. We should do the exact same thing with radical Islamic terrorism.
That makes as much common sense as anything I've ever heard. Yet, of course, you would think that Ted Cruz recommended putting every Muslim in an internment camp by the media reaction and by Hillary's reaction and Obama's reaction and everyone on the left. Joining us now, Richard Perle, Senior Fellow with the American Enterprise Institute, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, and former Chairman of the Pentagon's Defense Policy Board. Hello, sir.
Hello. It's a pleasure to talk.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, as you know. Okay, so what do you make of Ted Cruz's statement and the reaction we've seen to it?
Well, I think he is certainly right in arguing that we need to do much more than we are now doing. We need to concentrate resources where the threat is. The question of how we deal with Muslim immigrants is a much more difficult and complicated question, but it's certainly right that we should be very careful about who we're admitting to the United States. And that means much better control over our borders, because borders that can be penetrated by Latin American, Central American workers can also be penetrated by terrorists.
Absolutely. Well, Richard Johnson said just this afternoon, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, that terrorists are plotting imminent attacks and that foreign fighters are coming in along with refugees to this country.
Well, they will come in any way they can, including among refugees. But they can also cross the southern border, or for that matter, the northern border.
Yep. No, that's absolutely true. But when it comes to existing Muslim communities, I mean, look, Richard, we've seen what's going on in Europe. I mean, there are people who say Europe is lost. I mean, it's too far gone. The enclaves, the no-go zones, which the media denies exist, but especially in Brussels, we hear they do exist. I mean, if we don't do something here, we're headed in the same direction. So is Cruz onto the right course of action, which, by the way, New York had for years until Bill de Blasio stopped it?
Well, I think we are certainly right to keep a very close eye on those institutions that are preaching radical Islam. And there are a number of mosques in the United States, many more in Europe, that do exactly that. And if de Blasio thinks it's wrong to keep an eye on that, I think he's making a very serious mistake.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. We have a president who, went to a baseball game after speaking about the terrorist attack for 51 seconds. There were missing Americans, very seriously injured Americans, and of course many people dead and wounded who weren't American. And he goes to the baseball game. He talks about how we need more black managers in baseball. Then he goes to Argentina and he's dancing. Please tell me about the optics and how, if you could picture any other president that you could remember in your lifetime that would have done something similar under similar circumstances.
No, it is hardly the behavior of someone who leads a great nation and who takes seriously the threat that we face along with others in Europe and elsewhere. And I think he gave the game away when he made a remark that terrorism is not an existential threat.
Right. Yep.
What does he mean by that? Does he mean that because an act of terror will not destroy every living American and end our existence as a nation, we can be indifferent to the magnitude of the threat that does exist?
Yeah.
Remarks like that run counter to the sense of danger that we should appropriately understand.
Absolutely.
Because the next act of terror may well involve, and if they have anything to say about it, will involve a weapon of mass destruction.
God forbid. Absolutely. Richard, thank you so much, sir. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Folks, we're taking your calls next at 877 Newsmax, so stay right where you are.